big story today because Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who's one of the richest men in the UK, he's the part owner of Manchester United, he's told Sky News that he thinks the UK has been colonised by immigrants and it's costing too much money. Well, the Prime Minister has demanded an apology, saying his comments were offensive and wrong. The Manchester United Supporters Trust also voicing concerns.
It's all part of a wide-ranging interview that Ed Conway has done with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, where he also called for courage from politicians to make difficult but necessary decisions on issues like the rising welfare bill, and said we need somebody who's prepared to be unpopular for a period of time to get the big issues sorted out. Let's have a listen here to Sir Jim Ratcliffe talking to Ed.
If you really want to deal with the major issues of immigration, with people opting to take benefits rather than working for a living, if you want to deal with that, then you're going to have to do some things which are unpopular and show some courage.
And has this government done that?
No, I think they I don't know whether it's just the apparatus that hasn't allowed Keir to do it, or he's maybe too nice. He's a nice. I mean, I know Keir. He's a nice man. I like him, but it's a tough job, and I think you have to do some difficult things with the UK to get it back on track, because at the moment, I don't think the economy is in a good... You can't afford... you can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised?
It'll cause... Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
You met recently with Nigel Farage, didn't you?
I did.
Do you think that they would be a good government if they were to win the next election?
I think Nigel is an intelligent man, and I think he's got good intentions, but in a way you could say exactly the same about Keir when Keir came in. I think it needs somebody who's prepared to be unpopular for a period of time too. Get the big issues sorted out, would be my view.
Omara's here to discuss this. I mean, people like Sir Jim Ratcliffe don't normally do interviews, and I think perhaps we're kind of starting to see from that why that might be. I mean, firstly, the comments on colonisation, there's been a real political backlash to that, right?
Yeah, there really has. There's been quite a lot of kind of shock and anger at some of those comments and what people feel that he was insinuating. So Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has done a big kind of tweet where he says, offensive and wrong, Britain is a proud, tolerant and diverse country. Jim Ratcliffe should apologise. And then, interestingly, Nigel Farage has reacted quite differently, and he put out a statement where he said, Britain has undergone unprecedented mass immigration that has changed the character of many areas in our country. Labour may try to ignore that, but reform won't. And then the Lib Dems also came out and said it was totally wrong and that Jim Ratcliffe should apologise as well. So if you look at the spectrum of reaction, I think what's fascinating is reform is not condemning or trying to brand what Jim Ratcliffe has said as wrong. They are basically trying to say, actually, he might have a point, and we are the party with the courage to actually say, perhaps he's right, whereas Labour and Lib Dems very much wanting to say, hold on a second, this is far beyond acceptable language and rhetoric, and we want to call it out straight away. I think what's really interesting is how little we've heard from the Conservative Party. So far this morning, we tried to get in touch with the Tories, and they haven't really given us anything.
That's interesting.
And I think it's interesting because I think they are going to be very careful about wanting to be attacked from reform by trying to, potentially say that, Labour and Tory, just neither of them have the courage to face up to these difficult conversations. So I think Tories are going to be thinking very hard about how to nonetheless show their voters that, hold on a second, we don't want to demonise immigrants, but necessarily also not alienate people who are minded to go to reform because they know they are bleeding voters in that direction.
He also got his statistics wrong, which I think makes the use of that word colonisation even worse, because he was talking about a 12 million increase. He said from 2020 to 2026. I think he meant from 2000 to 2026, and then his numbers would have been closer to accurate, which I think only makes the inflammatory use of colonisation even worse. The part though at the end there is quite interesting, about the need. It followed apart, by the way, talking about Manchester United and taking tough choices, and he was claiming starting to see a bit of a pickup on the pitch just in the last few games, so it's a bit generous.
They have been doing quite well.
Yeah, but 4 or 5 games after, a year and a half. Anyway, but saying you need to take tough choices and be unpopular, as he has been and been booed in the stands, and that isn't something he sees the government doing, which is, again, quite timely at a moment in time where, the Prime Minister's probably going to have to do what the left of his party wants for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think what was interesting was he was trying to argue that we need more courage in politics. We need parties that are willing to, what do we hear in the election, make tough decisions and actually do them. And I think the problem is that Labour is incredibly unpopular, but not necessarily for taking all of the tough decisions, because most of those tough decisions were actually U-turned anyway. They've become unpopular for many reasons we haven't got time to get into. But I think he was trying to argue that actually we need more politicians who are willing to say unpopular things, say things that might sound, offensive or might be considered a little bit radical if we're going to get out of this hole and look at those GDP
But it's also, I guess, doing things that might be unpopular in the short term as well, right? So, if you're looking, there's all kinds of kind of long-term issues you can see in the country, whether it is, the welfare bill, for example, something that Keir Starmer tried to tackle and was not allowed to by his own MPs. We're talking about special educational needs on the programme recently. That's another thing that, they've got this bill that's going up, no real kind of long-term plan to get it down. I guess from that perspective, he's got a bit of a point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and by the way, it's such a good interview. It's about 18 minutes long, well worth checking out on the Sky News website. It starts, and a lot of it, which Ed knows, better than probably anyone other than Jim Ratcliffe, about the lack of manufacturing in this country and the decline of that. And so he started coming at it from that angle, which is, he makes the point that manufacturing in the 90s was over 20% of our GDP. It's now only 8%, and goes through the factors that have hollowed that out. And at the same time is saying, and yet they're not, making any of the other kind of business decisions we need to make. So it's well worth watching the full interview from Jim Ratcliffe.
And let's not forget, it was only a couple of days ago Wes Streeting was releasing his WhatsApps, basically saying they have no growth strategy. Now you've had GDP figures out this morning, basically almost no growth, and you can start to see a pattern. And I think the difficulty is that there is an element of truth, as you were saying, in what Jim Ratcliffe has said, and then the difficulty is that some of the other things you said are so much more controversial that you end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, perhaps. But that's politics, right?
Yeah.
All right, great stuff. True. Thank you.
So we have been talking, of course, about those comments by Sir Jim Ratcliffe on the programme, and I'd be very interested to get the government's perspective on this, of course, the comments that he made about colonisation, and also he did have some other criticisms of the government as well that would be interesting to get into. The Parliamentary Under-Secretary for State at the Ministry of Justice, Jake Richards, joins us now. It's great to have you on the programme. Awful lot to get to. Before we do, I did want to start off on your announcement on knife crime. It feels particularly important given the kind of double stabbing that we saw in Brent. What's the plan?
Well, look, the government has a plan to try and reduce knife crime by 50% over the next decade. We've made some progress in that. We've seen an 8% reduction in knife crime generally, a 27% reduction in homicides. But as you've just said, far too often there is still too much knife crime, in particular affecting our young people. So today we're announcing a plan which means that any child that is caught in possession of a knife will receive intensive, quick, rigorous supervision to make sure that they're diverted from criminality and that they never return to a life of crime again. We're backing that up with investment, £320 million into youth justice services over the next 3 years. And the whole point of this, to coin a phrase, is being tough on crime, tough on knife crime, but also tough on the causes of it. And if you're caught with a knife and a child is caught with a knife, then we need to deal with it quickly, and our plan today will do that.
I just wanted to get your reaction to the comments that have been made to Ed Conway from Sir Jim Ratcliffe. What do you make of what he had to say?
Well, firstly, I think that the language used around colonisation is ugly and actually quite offensive and frankly wrong.
Do you think it's racist?
The idea that we are, as a country, being taken over by people from abroad, I think is not right and is wrong, and I think I understand why many people would find it offensive. It's perfectly legitimate to raise concerns about immigration. That's why this government has a commitment to bring down levels of immigration and has already gone very far in bringing down levels of immigration from the 1 million net immigration high that we had under the Conservative government. But we do need to be careful about the language we use. And the fact that Jim Ratcliffe then went on to use statistics which were completely wrong, and also the context in which he moved to Monaco to avoid paying £4 billion of tax in this country, I think he should perhaps keep some of his views to himself on this.
Do you think saying that the UK has been colonised, do you think that's racist language?
Look, I just don't think it's very helpful, and I think it's offensive language.
OK. I want to pick up a bit on the kind of wider point that he was making as well. He was basically saying that given the serious challenges ahead, given the state of the economy, we need some courageous decision-making from politicians. So he said, if you really want to deal with the major issues of immigration, with people opting to take benefits rather than working for a living, if you want to deal with that, then you're going to have to do some things that are unpopular and show some courage. And that is a criticism, I think, that many people could level at this government. Do you need to show a bit more courage to take unpopular decisions, things that haven't been focus grouped out of their lives, you know, and actually make a difference?
Well, look, I think I agree with him on this part. You know, the country for too long has been stuck for 14 years of failed Conservative government, stagnant growth.
I'm talking, can I just come in? No, I have to
Sophie,
come in. No, stop. I'm really sorry, but I can't let you kind of get away with that. You know, you've been in power for, you know, a sizable period of time. We had new growth figures out today that show 0.1% growth. I mean, come on, this is the whole point.
Sophie, but
this is literally the point of what Sir Jim is saying.
Let me avoid the partisan attacks and answer the question directly. Yes, we have to bring dramatic change to this country. That's why we were elected with a manifesto on the front page which said change. We've begun to do that with some pretty radical and sometimes unpopular policies. For example, on planning reforms. Really difficult but important planning reforms to try and build the houses that we need, which will also help in terms of getting the economy growing. On immigration, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, made a remarkable policy statement, which, yes, has upset some of my own party indeed, but it's absolutely necessary if we're going to show to the British people that we can get results in getting control of our borders and bringing down levels of illegal migration. So there's a lot more to do, and I'm not for a minute suggesting that this is job done, but I think this government has shown a capacity to be able to those difficult decisions, and we've got to take that forward.
He's talking specifically about welfare, right? So the Office for Budget Responsibility is saying that the overall bill for sickness benefit could be due to be £109 billion by the end of the decade. I think we've got some graphics as well showing the rise. This is the Office of Budget Responsibility. You know, the rise in working age adults claiming these benefits just going up and up and up. Labour's got to get that down, right? Are you going to get that down?
I believe we will. Look, one of the big shocking...
Are you going to get it down?
Yes, because one of the big shocking statistics is that 1 in 8 young people in our country is now not in work or in employment. And that is both shocking in terms of the money and the finances for the taxpayer and your viewers, but it's also shocking morally because we do not want, especially the Labour Party, the party of work, to have young people out of work and employment and training. So we've got to get a grip of it. And Pat McFadden, who you'll no doubt be speaking to at some point, will be bringing forward a package of reforms in the future to do that.
If you kind of forgive my kind of scepticism, you tried to get this welfare stuff through before and it was too unpopular, to use that word, with your own MPs. Now Keir Starmer is in an even more weakened position. If he tries to get this kind of stuff through, he's just going to get tapped out, isn't he?
Well, no, I don't think that's right. I think that Pat McFadden will bring forward a package, particularly focused on this really seismic issue of young people who are not in employment, not in training, not in education. We need to get a grip of that. I think we'll be bringing forward a package in which we'll do that, and I think we'll succeed in doing that.
There's been a lot of talk about Labour needing to change in the wake of the difficult week you've had, the pressures on Keir Starmer's leadership, and some people are saying that this is going to mean a move to the left. Would that be a mistake?
Well, I think on this particular issue, I don't think it's left-wing or right-wing to try and want more people to get back into work. Work is inherently a good thing, and it's part of what the Labour Party was created to do.
Would a move to the left be a mistake?
Well, look, I think that we won the last election from the centre-left of British politics. We are a centre-left party, and I think that's where we will remain.
I just want to talk to you about another story that has bubbled up over the last 24 hours, right? So lots of reports that Number 10 is preparing to replace the Cabinet Secretary of the top civil service and put in Antonia Romeo, who is the current top civil service in the Home Office. There was an extraordinary interview last night by Sir Simon MacDonald, former Permanent Secretary of the Home Foreign Office, who said he tried to warn Number 10 about this process and needs to start from scratch. He says he's been trying to get in touch and offer testimony, but no one's called him back. And there has been... Look, Antonia Romeo dynamic, would be the first one in the job, but there was, of course, an investigation back in 2017 over bullying and misuse of expenses. What is going on here? You need to get everything right with this process.
So, look, two things. First of all, I can't comment on speculation as to who might be moving in and around the civil service. It's well above my pay grade, Sophie. But in terms of this vetting process, the Prime Minister has been very clear that something is clearly going wrong in government when it comes to vetting processes. And so, you know, we're looking at how we can change that, make that more rigorous, and I'm sure that will include this gentleman's comments as well when we consider that.
So do you think it's important then that someone gives this guy a call, gives Sir Simon McDonald a call?
Well, I'm sure someone will be speaking to... I genuinely don't know who this gentleman is. I'm sure he's a very senior civil servant.
He's former permanent secretary of the Foreign Office. I mean, he's quite a big deal, right?
I personally don't know him, but no doubt someone should be speaking to him about his concerns about the vetting process, because there are clearly problems in the vetting process more generally. And if someone with his experience at the top of the civil service has concerns about it too, we should be listening to them.
Should we pass his number on to you?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm the person that he should be speaking to, but someone should certainly speak to him, yes. Maybe not me.
OK, thanks very much indeed. We'll be talking about this, of course, throughout the programme. Good to have you on, as always, Jake Richards. And coming up, we're going to be talking to Deborah Haynes about the NATO meeting, an awful lot going on in the world. That is in Brussels. We'll be covering that in just a few moments' time.